If you're buying organic food or beauty products, you are probably doing it for the wrong reasons. There are three good reasons to buy organic, three very good reasons, but they're not the reasons that most people buy organic, at least not the people that I know. Most people I know who buy organic because they think that organic food is healthier. And they think that organic beauty products are healthier, that they have fewer chemicals, they have fewer allergens, they are just better for you. I do not know whether this is true, but I do know that it has not been backed up by any studies. There has not been found a causal link between eating organic food and better health outcomes. There has been no link between buying conventionally farmed food and poor health outcomes, except for the fact that people who buy organic food tend to be wealthier than people who buy conventionally farmed food, and therefore wealthier people do, on the whole, have better outcomes in our country than poor people do. So there is that link, but it is not a causal link found with organic food. So while that link may be found in the future, I'm not saying that it couldn't be found in the future. It's possible, but up until now, the studies that have been done on people eating organic food versus conventionally farmed food have not found that the people who eat organic are doing better than the people who aren't. They have not found that. Organic food is not necessarily better for you, but it is a lot better for the people who pick it. The amount of pesticides that are used on conventionally farmed fruits and vegetables, once they get to the end consumer, once they get to you and me who are picking it up at the supermarket, and say we go home and we rinse it, it's already been washed at the farm, by the way, but say we want to wash it again, the amount of pesticides that's on that carrot or that piece of fruit, by the time it gets into your body, it's very little. I understand that some people are not going to want any pesticides in them at all. That's fine, but I'm just telling you the amount that you're getting is trace amounts. But you know who is getting a lot of pesticides are the people who are picking that fruit, because they are there when the pesticides are being sprayed. And they're actually breathing them in at the source as they're being sprayed. And they are having to stand for 12 hours in a field where pesticides are being sprayed. Or say pesticides are being sprayed in the next field over, and they're getting the wind is blowing just clouds of pesticides onto them for 12 hours a day. Those are the people who are getting exposed to pesticides. It's not you and me. I mean, we're getting exposed, but at very small amounts. The people who are getting hurt by conventional farming chemically are the people who are working in the fields. So if you're choosing to buy organic, what you're saying to that grower is, I care about the health of the people who are picking this product. So I think that's the most important reason to buy organic, is because you care about the people who are working on the farms. But the second most important reason to buy organic is because organic farming practices are slightly better for the environment long term. Now, conventional farming practices, for the most part, depend heavily upon nitrate fertilizers, various types of pesticides, and sometimes manufactured or GMO seeds. And these pesticides get into the environment. They can harm, as we found, they can harm bees. They were really hard on the bee populations when there was bee colony collapse. over the last 15 years. That was because of heavy use of neonicotinoids, which is Roundup. It's that type of fertilizer, or sorry, pesticide. And very famously in the 1970s, they were using a lot of the pesticide DDT, which is a very effective pesticide, but it was also very effective at causing defects in the shells of birds, and so it decimated bird populations because egg shells were born soft, and so they would collapse and they would not develop into chicks. So these pesticides, and those are just two examples of the environmental impact. They're very, very impactful. They are very harmful to a lot of different species. So they are very hard on the biodiversity, on the environment in general. And that's just the pesticides. The fertilizers have a lot of issues. Now, nitrate fertilizers came into use in the late 60s, early 70s, and they were a huge breakthrough because they meant very high crop yields. You could get very quick, very high crop yields. And you wouldn't have to use the sort of old-fashioned soil practices of fertilizing with your farm animals, with their manure. You wouldn't have to do things like crop rotation and letting the fields rest so that the soil could recover for the next crop. But nitrate fertilizers sort of artificially cause soil recovery, but over time, the soil does get exhausted if it's not renewed in a slower, natural way, and over time it can cause salination. It can cause the soil to become dry, brittle, and salty. So soils can absolutely get exhausted over time using the nitrate fertilizers, and you need more and more of them year over year to get the same result. That's just the soil piece of it. The other piece of it is you have these millions of acres under cultivation of conventional farming methods, and that's, tens and hundreds of millions of gallons of nitrate fertilizer that's going on to these fields, that then when it rains, that those nitrate fertilizers run off into rivers and streams, most notably the Mississippi River. All the nitrate fertilizers from the middle part of the country are siphoned off in rain into the Mississippi River, and they cause algae blooms because the algae like to eat the fertilizer the same way that the plants do. And they cause algae blooms which suck the oxygen out of the water in huge pockets in the Gulf of Mexico, and they cause dead zones, which is zones in the water that have no oxygen, which means they cannot support fish life or plant life in the water. So these farming practices in the middle of the country in the United States are causing fish die-offs in the Gulf of Mexico. So there are enormous environmental impacts, short-term benefits, but enormous environmental impacts. Long-term organic buying also supports more sustainable farming practices. The third reason that you should be buying organic is taste. Organic fruits and vegetables tend to taste better. It's not across the board, but generally when something is grown from soil that is not exhausted and it is able to develop more slowly than nitrate fertilizers can facilitate, a slower growing tomato will develop more flavor molecules than a conventionally grown tomato, which is why sometimes your conventionally grown tomato will taste kind of watery. It's because it grew too fast, did not develop the flavor compounds. So it's better for the workers, better for the environment, better tasting not necessarily better for your health, but it's not all about that. There are good reasons to buy organic, just not the reasons you think.